When I was in 8th grade, there was a part of our school no one ever talked about. The old wing. It had been boarded up for decades, abandoned after a fire that gutted most of it. The fire was supposedly an accident, but kids loved to whisper about how it wasn't. They'd say a teacher had snapped, locked the doors, and trapped her class inside before setting the place alight. Some claimed you could still hear the screams of the students late at night. Others swore they'd seen shadowy figures in the windows. I never believed any of it. It was just a story, until the night of the lock-in. The lock-in was supposed to be fun. The 8th grade class would spend the night in the gym, playing games, eating pizza, and pretending to sleep in sleeping bags on the cold floor. I was with my best friend Danny, who always had a knack for stirring up trouble. As the night went on, a group of us gathered in the corner of the gym, trading ghost stories. It didn't take long for someone to bring up the old wing. My cousin said a janitor saw lights on in there once. A girl whispered, "But there's no power, so how could that happen?" A boy added, "My dad says they boarded it up because people kept hearing voices, like crying and begging. They think it's the kids who..." "Shut up," someone snapped, clearly spooked. Danny rolled his eyes and nudged me. "You don't believe this crap, do you?" I shrugged. "It's just stories." He grinned. "Then let's prove it." "What?" "Let's check it out." I hesitated. "No way. We'll get in trouble." "Only if we get caught," he said. "Come on, aren't you curious?" The others watched us with a mix of nervousness and anticipation. I didn't want to be the coward, so, against my better judgment, I followed Danny out of the gym. The school felt different at night. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above us, casting long, flickering shadows. Every step we took echoed too loudly in the silence. The double doors to the old wing were at the far end of the hall. They loomed in the dim light, their chipped paint and heavy chains giving them an ominous presence. When we reached the doors, I felt my stomach twist. The chains were loose, the padlock missing. Danny grinned and pushed the doors open. The air that greeted us was colder, carrying the faint smell of mildew and ash. My flashlight beam wavered as we stepped inside. The hallway beyond was narrow, the walls lined with broken lockers and peeling paint. Glass crunched under our shoes, and dust swirled in the air. "See?" Danny said, his voice too loud. "Nothing to be scared of." But as we moved deeper, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. We stopped when we heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A faint, rhythmic sound coming from somewhere up ahead. "What's that?" I whispered. Danny shrugged, but I saw his smirk falter. Probably just a rat. The tapping grew louder as we crept forward. It led us to a classroom near the end of the hall. The door was ajar, hanging crookedly on its hinges. Inside, the air was freezing. The room was a mess of overturned desks, shattered windows, graffiti scrawled on the walls. But the tapping continued, steady and deliberate. It was coming from the teacher's desk in the corner. Danny walked over, his flashlight beam bouncing. "See?" "Nothing." The drawer slid open on its own. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Danny stepped back, but then he laughed nervously. Inside the drawer was an old brass school bell, tarnished and cracked. "This is what everyone's scared of," he said, picking it up. "A stupid bell." He gave it a shake. The sound that came out wasn't normal. It wasn't a cheerful ding. It was sharp, piercing, and wrong, like metal screaming against metal. The air grew colder, and the lights flickered violently before plunging us into darkness. "Danny?" I whispered, clutching his arm. "Yeah," he said, his voice trembling. Then came the footsteps. They started softly, like someone walking carefully down the hallway. But they grew louder, heavier, more deliberate. My flashlight flickered as I aimed it toward the door. Something moved. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but then I realized shadows don't walk. A figure stood in the doorway, its head tilted unnaturally to the side. Its face was blurred, like someone had smeared it with charcoal. "Run," Danny whispered. We bolted out of the classroom, the sound of footsteps pounding behind us. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretching endlessly as we sprinted. My chest burned, my legs ached, but I didn't dare look back. I could hear the whispers now soft, unintelligible, but growing louder with every step. Danny tripped and nearly fell, but I grabbed his arm and pulled him up. "Come on." The shadows seemed to multiply, flickering in and out of sight. The air grew heavier, pressing down on my chest, making it harder to breathe. Finally, we saw the double doors ahead. Danny reached them first, slamming them open as we stumbled into the main hallway. The cold vanished the moment we were back in the main building. The hum of the fluorescent lights returned, grounding us in the normal world. Danny and I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. "What the hell was that?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He just stared at the doors, his face pale. The next day, the old wing was sealed off completely. The chains were replaced, and the teachers refused to answer any questions about it. Danny stopped coming to school a few weeks later. His parents said he was sick, but I knew better. As for me, I tried to move on. But sometimes, late at night, I hear it. The sharp, unnatural sound of a bell ringing. And I know the shadows are still there, waiting for someone to come back. When I think back to 8th grade, I don't remember math class or field trips or even my friends. I remember the bleachers. Every school has that one place, the spot no one talks about but everyone knows. At my school, it was the old set of metal bleachers behind the gym. Rusted and worn, they were off limits, supposedly because they were unstable. But the real reason, they say a kid died there years ago accidentally, or maybe not. There were whispers about how he was bullied relentlessly, how he used to sit under the bleachers during lunch to hide from everyone. Some people said he tripped and fell while climbing them, snapping his neck. Others claimed the bullies pushed him. The school never confirmed anything, of course. They just taped them off, added some flimsy warning signs, and hoped people would forget. It was just another ghost story, something the older kids told to freak us out. At least, that's what I thought until everything happened. It started with Mitch and Ryan. Mitch and Ryan had made my life miserable since the first week of school. They didn't need a reason. Maybe it was because I was quiet, or because I liked to read during lunch, or maybe just because I existed. It didn't matter. They found me. Every day, it was something new. They'd knock my books out of my hands, call me names, or corner me in the hallway just to see me squirm. Most of the time I could avoid them if I kept my head down, but some days they'd catch me. Their favorite game was cornering me after school, usually when most of the other kids had already left. That's when they'd stake things further, shoving me into lockers, stealing my backpack, or dumping my homework into a trash can. One Friday afternoon, they went too far. "Hey, loser," Mitch called out as I hurried out of the building, hoping to make it to the bus before they saw me. I didn't turn around. I knew better. "Where are you going, huh?" Ryan said, stepping in front of me with a smirk. Before I could answer, Mitch yanked my backpack off my shoulders. "Give it back." I snapped, my voice shaking more than I wanted. "Make us," Mitch said, tossing the bag to Ryan. They started playing keep away, laughing as I scrambled to grab it. I lunged for it, but Mitch shoved me backward. "Not so fast." "Come on, guys," I pleaded. "Please." Ryan grinned. "All right, we'll give it back. But you gotta go get it first." He hurled the bag over my head, and it landed on the far side of the bleachers. I froze. The bleachers loomed behind them, tall and rusting, their shadows stretching across the cracked pavement. Even in broad daylight, they felt wrong, like something was watching from beneath them. "What's the matter?" Mitch taunted. "You scared?" I wanted to run, but I couldn't leave my bag. It had everything in it. My books, my homework, my mom's house keys. So, I went. The closer I got, the colder the air seemed to grow. My footsteps echoed too loudly on the pavement, and the world around me felt muffled, like the space had been sealed off from the rest of reality. I crouched down and peered into the shadows beneath the bleachers. My bag lay just out of reach, half buried in a pile of dead leaves and dirt. "Come on, hurry up," Mitch called, his voice sounding distant, almost distorted. I ducked under the metal frame, the sharp smell of rust and mildew hitting me like a slap. The shadows grew thicker as I moved closer to my bag, and a strange chill ran down my spine. Then I heard it, a whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind rustling through the leaves, but the sound was too clear, too deliberate. "Help me," it said. The voice was soft, almost a hiss, but it sent a jolt of fear through my chest. "Help me." I froze, my hand clutching the strap of my bag. The voice seemed to come from deeper beneath the bleachers, from a dark corner where the light didn't reach. I backed away slowly, dragging my bag with me, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear Mitch and Ryan laughing in the distance. After school, they dragged me back to the bleachers. This time, they came prepared. Mitch carried a flashlight, and Ryan had a rope slung over his shoulder for reasons I didn't want to think about. "Here's the deal," Mitch said, shining the flashlight in my face. "You're gonna crawl under there and stay for 5 minutes. If you come out before that, you lose." "Lose what?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Your dignity," Ryan said with a grin. "Not that you have much to begin with." I looked at the shadows beneath the bleachers. The cold air seemed to seep out like a warning, and the voice from Friday whispered in the back of my mind. "I don't want to," I said. Mitch shoved me forward. "Do it, or we'll shove you under ourselves." Their laughter echoed around me as I crouched down and crawled into the dark. The air was colder than before, and the smell of rust and decay was overwhelming. My flashlight flickered as I moved deeper, its beam barely cutting through the thick shadows. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but every creak of the metal above me made my heart race. Then I saw it. At first, it looked like a pile of rags, huddled in the corner beneath the farthest set of bleachers. I thought it might have been an old jacket left behind years ago. But then it moved. My flashlight caught a face pale and sunken, with hollow eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Its mouth hung open, revealing rows of jagged blackened teeth, and its body twitched as it dragged itself toward me. "Help me," it whispered, its voice sharp and metallic. I screamed, the sound tearing out of my throat as I scrambled backward, banging my head against the metal frame. "Get out of there," Mitch yelled, but his voice sounded far away. The thing kept coming, its skeletal fingers clawing at the dirt, pulling its emaciated body closer and closer. I don't remember how I got out. One moment, I was staring at the thing, frozen with fear, and the next, I was running sprinting across the pavement as Mitch and Ryan's screams echoed behind me. When I finally stopped, I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. "What the hell was that?" Ryan shouted, his face pale and slick with sweat. Mitch didn't answer. He was staring at the bleachers, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The figure was standing now, its hollow eyes fixed on us. "We're leaving," Mitch said, his voice barely above a whisper. And we did. Mitch and Ryan never spoke to me again after that. They avoided me in the hallways, their faces pale and haunted whenever they saw me. The school finally tore down the old bleachers that summer. I thought it would bring me peace. But sometimes, late at night, I hear it again, that soft, desperate whisper. "Help me." And I know it's still there.